Good morning. Pleasure to be here this morning. I was here in September, hadn't been here in quite a little while. I was here in September, and I have to reiterate, it's so nice to see you finally did something with the ceiling. This is really nice. So let's take a moment to bring ourselves fully here into this time and space together. Close your eyes, take some deep breaths. Set aside all those lists we have at home that bind us to the errands we have to run, the places we have to be, the friends we have to see, the family we have to take care of. Let us be fully here in this time, in this place, to enter into this spiritual space, to welcome this community into our lives, and to find peace and quiet in this sanctuary here together for these few brief moments. Amen. I'd like to ask you to turn to 515 in the back of your hymnal. And I'd like us to read this in unison. We don't have to read it responsively. I would like us to read it responsibly, however. I'd like to ask us to read it slowly and thoughtfully. I think a lot of times when we have these things that we're going to say in response or in unison, we get caught up in just reading them and not really paying attention. So I'd like us to read this slowly and with deliberate awareness together. Number 515. For the sun and the dawn, which we did not create, for the moon and the evening, which we did not make, for food which we plant but cannot grow, for friends and loved ones we have not earned and cannot buy, for this gathered company which welcomes us as we are, from wherever we have come, for all our free churches that keep us human and encourage us in our quest for beauty, truth, and love, for all things which come to us as gifts of being from sources beyond ourselves, gifts of life and love and friendship. We lift up our hearts in thanks this day. Thanks. There's a lot of things that I'm grateful for, a lot of things that I know all of you are grateful for. So I was thinking about blessings a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking of this idea of counting my blessings. And I thought, you know, it strikes me that there's a difference, though, between blessings and the things that I'm grateful for, that list in that litany there, and all the things that we come up with. Blessings seem somehow different to me. And so I looked it up online for a definition, because words are powerful things, and we sometimes don't really pay attention to the distinctions between words. There wouldn't be two different words if they weren't two different meanings. But there are nuances sometimes we tend to lose track of. And blessings tend to be, according to the definition, a little more significant. They're larger than the things that happen in our daily lives that we tend to take for granted almost. And it's good to stop and think about, but blessings are something else. And the second part of blessings is, it's very clear that we tend to think of blessings as being somehow bestowed upon us by some greater power, whatever that might be. Well, and as a non-theist, I find that eminently non-helpful. So I've sort of discarded that, but I do like the idea that blessings are somehow significant. I found a book called Counting My Blessings by Robert Bly, and I thought, well, Robert Bly is a good, I've read other things, so this will be good. So I downloaded this book, and I started reading it, And I was terribly disappointed. So I don't advocate it. I don't recommend it. I'll tell you why. He lists 63 things that he counts as his blessings. And the first one is air conditioning. Now, I agree that living in Delaware, air conditioning in June, July, and August is certainly a delight, but I'm not sure it's a blessing. And he goes on to bumper stickers, CDs, and compound interest, and dogs, and ears, and electricity, etc. And so it's not a comprehensive blessing list for me. It's more like that litany. It's more of the list of things that I'm grateful for. And it's true, I am grateful for them. But I don't think they quite measure up. Fortunately for him and us, and he included in his preface a nice quote by Paul McElroy, which I want to share with you. Sorrow and joy are yoked together, not for contrast, but because they are different expressions of the same physiological condition. It is a fallacy to assume that sorrow implies evil and that joy represents happiness. For even in laughter, the heart is sad, and the end of joy is often heaviness. Legend tells of the woman who came to the river Styx to be ferried across to the land of departed spirits. Kairos, the ferryman, offers her a certain potion which can cause her to forget the life she is leaving and all of its sorrows. In the end, the woman leaves the draught untasted, choosing to remember life's pains and sorrows and failures, rather than to forget its joys, its triumphs, and its loves. Sorrow and joy belong together. They are precious experiences which deepen understanding and give meaning to our life. They are precious experiences which deepen understanding and give blessing to our life. That's my definition of blessings, and I offer it to you to consider. They are the precious experiences which deepen understanding and give meaning to life. So, blessings aren't those things that happen around us. Blessings are, for me, more the events that reveal life to me, to inspire me with life, that motivate me and make my life richer and fuller. They're experiences that broaden my experience of the world and increase my relationships and the depth of my understanding with other people. So I thought what I'd like to do is to share with you 3 of my significant blessings. And those of you who have listened to me in the past, you've heard all 3 of these before, essentially because they are so significant in my life. But I consider them blessings, so I would like to offer them. The first one is September of 1966. I was 17, and I spent my whole life growing up in Massachusetts. But my dad had a new job, and my parents moved to Michigan, Kalamazoo, Michigan. There really is a Kalamazoo, Michigan, lovely town. And we moved into town 3 days before my senior year in high school. And a lot of times when I tell people that, they go, "Oh, you poor guy." And it was a challenge, it really was. But it also was an opportunity to leave behind all the assumptions and the place that I had been placed by everyone that I knew in my hometown. And to sort of reinvent myself, to be more intentional about reaching out and being in that experience, about being relocated to Kalamazoo, Michigan. So we moved in over Labor Day weekend, and I was puttering around the house, and I happened to look out, and there's this young woman walking down the street with her dog. She's walking her dog. And I'm thinking, I should go out there and talk to her. And I'm thinking, that's not you. And I'm thinking, yeah, but it should be me. So I said, okay. So I walked down the driveway, introduced myself, chatted with this young woman, and had a nice conversation. Wound up, she was a senior in high school too. She was going to be going to the same grade as me. And so we found a few things in common, and it was very nice. And it was a new experience for me because it really meant stepping outside of my comfort zone. And as many of you know, I've now been married to that woman for 52 years. And she sends her greetings. She's in Alexandria today visiting our daughter, her husband, and our granddaughter. And I have pictures for later. But I realized that was a blessing that came unannounced, unexpected. It was an opportunity to respond to a new situation, to be something different, to reach out and explore my own sense of being, my own understanding of who I am and who I want to be, and become a different kind of a person. And it's been a significant blessing for a long time. So I think of it as being an experience. The second one I want to share with you is from June of 1997, just before I came here. I was out on a church excursion with the church I was serving in Massachusetts at the time. We did a whitewater rafting on the Deerfield River. They're Class 3 rapids, which is out of 5. So Class 3 isn't huge, but it's a significant thing. And so we were out, and it was beautiful, beautiful day, gorgeous June day, blue sky, absolutely gorgeous. I remember watching butterflies flitting around, and the colors were just gorgeous. And so we're going down the river, and we get to the significant rapids part, which had an 8-foot drop-off. And so we go over that, and we were in these rubber rafts. I know many of you pictured what that looks like. So we went over this drop, and we discovered at that moment that the quarter panel I was sitting on had a leak. So instead of it being a rigid raft, it was more like a slingshot. And so I went flying and wound up in the water. And it was a fascinating experience here too, a blessing, because it's interesting to be able to drift along underwater and thinking, I didn't know today was the last day of my life. I wasn't really prepared for it to all end right now in this circumstance. And running my hand along the bottom, and there are all those really round, small pebbles at the bottom of the river, and wanting to pick them up, as though it was going to make any difference. And I remember thinking, when we were orienting to begin with, they said, if you do get dumped out, just float along with your feet pointed downriver, and thinking, okay, which way's downriver? So I popped up eventually, I don't know, quarter of a mile down, 20 miles down, whatever it was. And Frank and Tony pulled me up into their raft. And I laid there on my back looking up this beautiful, beautiful sky, just absolutely gorgeous. And then leaning over saying, are you all right? Are you all right? Are you all right? And I knew what I was supposed to say. And I said, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that. And I have. I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. And it's been, whatever that is, that's 28 years. And I realize that I'm living on borrowed time. This is like overtime in a sports event, or some time extra. I feel like my life in many ways ended 28 years ago, but that every day since then has been a gift, and it has been an opportunity to experience being alive that I have really no right to and no expectation of. So that my whole view of life is different now. I see it as something I have to be more aware of and be grateful for. Every morning I have a spiritual exercise. I go out and sit on the front porch, and I sit there and I contemplate my day. And by that I don't mean the things that I have to do and the places I have to be. I think about, this is another one of those days that come to me as a blessing. This is one of those days that I have the opportunity to fill with whatever I want to fill it with. And I don't want to get to this evening and get to the point and say, you know, I could have done this or I should have done that. I could have been more aware of this. I could have been more awake. I could have reached out in that opportunity. I could have been different here. I want to be so in tune with who I am in each moment of today that as each moment comes along, I embrace it. And that's a blessing that has changed my life. And the third one I want to mention is in January of 2002, I had the opportunity to go to South Africa with a seminar from Lancaster Seminary, where I was working on my doctorate at the time, to study the truth and reconciliation process there. And many of you know about post-apartheid truth and reconciliation. And Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, and Desmond Tutu talking about restorative justice rather than punitive justice, where what they're looking to try to do is to reestablish relationship rather than to figure out who is justifiably angry and has the opportunity to create vengeance. Instead, to work on reestablishing relationship, reestablishing wholeness, reestablishing Ubuntu, reestablishing our human connections with other people. And I had the opportunity to meet some absolutely fantastic people. And it changed my perspective on life in a lot of ways as well. It was a blessing that came totally unexpected. When I was there, I had this opportunity to go on this seminar. And at the time, things were kind of tight. And we were debating whether I could come up with the $2,000. It was only $2,000 back then. $2,000 to go for 3 weeks to South Africa. And interesting, my wife says, well, how many weddings do you have scheduled? And I used to get paid $300 a wedding. I had 6 weddings scheduled out of the congregation. So she said, so use that money to go and do that. So that came along. There again, my wife is a blessing in my life, yes. So I went and did that, and many of you know that I've been back to South Africa 23 times since then. We sponsored a couple of children. We got a young woman through college. She now has a daughter and is struggling because South Africa is struggling. It has not been able to live up to its promises. But the whole idea of truth and reconciliation has taken on new meanings to me. It has opened my mind to this idea of working on relationships, whole relationships, rather than who's right and who's wrong, and who has more moral right than others. So there's a question for that. So that's really what I wanted to share with you. And what I want to do is invite you to think about this notion of blessings as being something bigger, broader, deeper, wider, the experiences that shape our vision of the world, who we are in the world, and how we want to be in the world. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. And I've tried to live my life that way, and I would like to invite you to live your life that way, to count your blessings on a daily basis, and to give thanks.